Let's meet Ferdinand de Saussure. Saussure was a Swiss linguist whose ideas on structure in language laid the foundation for much of the approach and progress of the linguistic science in the 20th century. And he is acknowledged as the founder of modern linguistics and semiology. He is known as the father of modern linguistics. One of the key ideas Saussure introduced were the concepts of langue and parole. On the one hand, there is langue. It is a virtual system developed and acquired by all the members of a society. It goes beyond willingness. Langue is abstract, while on the other hand, we have parole, which is concrete. We can understand parole as the use of the previously mentioned system, or in other words, the use of langue. Langue is a complete system of signs. To have a better understanding, let's have an example of a basic idea of signs. When we hear a sound, we relate that sound to a specific idea or concept, like we see in the image. While parole is the manifestation of that language system into a speech or a written form.
At this point, it is fundamental to mention that Saussure also established that langue is a system of signs expressing ideas, a treasure that society shares. In addition to that, he determined that langue is what allows the exercise of linguistics, which is formed by signs. Well, in connection with the above, we must emphasize that a sign is a double-faced psychic entity which is represented by a concept and an acoustic image. Those are known as signified and signifier. On one hand, the signifier is defined as the memory of the sound that comes to our mind when we think of a word, and on the other hand, the signified involves all the characteristics of the concept itself. For example, in the term roast, we understand that the signifier will be the sound of the word, the phonemes, and its signified will be that it is red with a goody stem and 5 petals. For that reason, in this context, it is essential to keep in mind that between the signified and signifier, there is a link that is arbitrary, since there is no natural relationship between the concept and the acoustic image. They are connected by convention, which means that they are combined without any motivation.
Another thing that Saussure identified was that both signifier and signified are a value that is determined not by what they are, but rather what they're not. So the value will be what helps you identify the signifier and the signified. Take for instance this signified. You can say it is a metal enclosure that has wheels and windows and can move and transport people, but that description also fits for these two. But you can specifically identify it because it's neither of those. Therefore, the signified is a value of its own. Similarly, this happens with the signifier car. We are able to identify it even if we pronounce it in different ways, like car, because it's not cow or tar. We can identify the latter as different values, therefore car is its own. So the value of the signifiers goes beyond of the individual sounds we make to pronounce it.
Furthermore, he noted that language is linear because we can say or write 2 signs at a time. From here, we must understand that the structure of language can be split into types of relationships: syntagmatic and paradigmatic. Syntagmatic is a relationship where we find combinations supported by 2 or more consecutive units that determine a syntagm. This investigates a chain of words which made of sentences. For example, T is an amazing teacher. This is a sentence in where words are combined in a linear arrangement. T is correlated with is with N, amazing with teacher. So the association is pronoun plus auxiliary verb plus article plus adjective plus noun. Now, on the other hand, paradigmatic is a relationship that holds elements of a sentence which can be substituted for another in a given context. We say that the relations are in absence because they are associated to the memory. For example, for the words education and teaching, we can say that when I think in education, I am also thinking in teaching because it is in my mind. The analysis here always goes vertical as it is shown in the examples. I is associated with Anna or Mark, and like with hates and hates with love, and so on.
Saussure also points out that the mutability of the sign is impossible, and he does so by stating the following. Point number 1. The arbitrary nature of the sign. There is no logical reason to change the meaning or nature of a sign in society, but if it can be transformed in order to adapt the sign. Number 2. The quantity and the difficulty of the sign and language. Saussure stipulates that because of the big number of signs, it is impossible to create or change some words in order to show more inclusion in the language. He says that if it is hard for the experts, for normal people will be impossible, and if they try to do it, the quality of the language will be reduced. And point number 3, the resistance of the speakers, or the collective inertia about the linguistic innovations. For some speakers, the innovation of their language is something that they will not accept. It is difficult and even tedious to know the meaning of the new words or expressions.
Finally, Saussure's study of language has two perspectives, one synchronic and the other one diachronic, as he explains in his book Course in General Linguistics. The synchronic perspective observes language from a static point of view. It makes a temporary cut and determines what are the patterns that structure language at that moment accepted by a speech community. This can be studied from present or a particular point in the past. This analysis can also be made of a dead language such as Latin, while on the other hand, the diachronic perspective examines the evolution of language through history. It is focused on how words and signs are modified, how new ones appear, and other ones became old-fashioned.
As we already said, Ferdinand de Saussure and his ideas paved the way for what we today know as the studies of linguistics.